Morning came slow over Hollow Creek, the kind of morning that never quite wakes up. The fog slid through the narrow streets like a tired ghost, brushing past the storefront windows and the diner signs that buzzed in protest. This town looked peaceful at first glance, but I'd lived long enough to know that peace is often camouflage. In Hollow Creek, everyone knows everyone else's business, and yet nobody really knows the truth. I sat in my office, third floor of an old brick building above a pawn shop that smelled of dust and regret. My desk was a battlefield of half-finished case files and stale coffee cups. I was going through last night's notes when the bell over the door gave a single, nervous chime. She stepped in like a question that didn't want an answer. Mid-30s, plain beige coat, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. She held her purse close to her chest as if it might keep her steady. "Mr. Blaine." "That's me," I said. "You look like someone who's lost more than sleep." Her name was Maria Holt. Her husband, Evan, hadn't come home after his night shift at the Route 9 diner. 2 kids waiting, breakfast untouched, bed cold. She'd already been to the police. They told her to wait 24 hours. She couldn't. She handed me a photo, a man in a diner uniform, smiling with the kind of ease people forget how to fake. I studied the photo longer than I should have, then looked back at her. "When did you last hear from him?" "Last night. He texted me he'd be home by 12:30. I waited until 3. Her voice cracked on the word waited. I nodded slowly. "Did he have enemies, debts, someone who might want to hurt him?" She hesitated just for a breath. "No. Everyone liked Evan." Her hand said otherwise, fingers twisting the strap of her purse like she was trying to strangle the truth. I told her I'd take the case. Not because I believed her story entirely, but because something about it smelled wrong, like coffee gone sour but still warm enough to drink. When she left, I stood at the window, watching her walk across the street into the fog. Hollow Creek swallowed her whole. I've learned to pay attention to the things a town tries to hide. I drove out to the Route 9 diner, a lonely rectangle of chrome and neon sitting between the highway and the woods. Inside, the cook, a man with scarred hands and a nicotine-stained apron, wiped the counter while pretending not to see me. "Evan Holt," I said, showing the photo. "Worked the night shift. You see him leave." He shook his head too fast. Finished his last order, grabbed his jacket, said something about the storm coming in. "That's it? Anyone follow him out?" "No, sir, just that friend of his, Chris. They used to sit outside after work, talk about old times." I wrote the name in my notebook. Chris Miller, local, same age, same high school. I'd heard the name before, usually followed by words like trouble or temper. When I stepped back outside, the fog had thickened, turning the world into a soft, muffled blur. My shoes scraped against the wet gravel as I stood by the diner's dumpster, staring at the faint outline of tire tracks disappearing toward the woods. Something inside me stirred, the old instinct from my days on the force. That quiet signal that says something here doesn't add up. I buttoned my coat, pulled down my hat, and took one last look at the diner lights flickering in the mist. Cases like this never start with a scream. They start with silence, the kind that seeps into your bones before you even know you're listening. The next morning came with rain, thin, cold, relentless. It drummed against my office window like a metronome, reminding me I was already behind. Maria had called twice before sunrise. I let both calls go to voicemail. Desperation always speaks too soon. I needed silence to think. The Route 9 diner had given me one name, and in a town like Hollow Creek, one name is enough to start a storm. Chris Miller, the family friend. Every missing person has one, the guy who knows too much, talks too fast, and always says he was like a brother to me. I drove out past the diner, following the narrow road that curved around Hollow Lake. The water was still, black as oil. A fishing dock sagged under the weight of yesterday's rain, and at the end of it stood Chris, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a faded flannel that had seen too many summers. He didn't turn when I called his name, just kept tossing pebbles into the lake, one after another as if testing how deep it went. "Chris Miller," I said, stepping beside him. He smirked without looking at me. "You're the guy Maria hired, huh? The famous detective." "Famous is a stretch," I replied. "I'm just the guy who asks the questions people don't want to answer." He finally turned, his eyes sharp, restless. "Then you're in the wrong town. People here don't like being asked much." "That's the problem with towns like this," I said. "Too much comfort, not enough truth." He chuckled, then tossed another stone. "Evan was my friend. We grew up together. Worked the same summer jobs, drank at the same bars. He didn't just disappear. Someone made him disappear." I watched the ripples spread across the water. "You think someone killed him?" "I think he got mixed up in something. Maybe something to do with that diner." "Drugs, money," he shrugged. "You tell me, you're the detective." There was something rehearsed in the way he spoke, like he'd been waiting for this conversation. I noticed a bruise on his knuckle, half hidden under dirt. Old or new, I couldn't tell. When I asked where he was the night Evan vanished, his answer came too smooth. "At home, alone. Fell asleep watching the game." "No one to vouch for you," he smiled, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Guess not." I left him standing there, framed against the gray water, the kind of picture you could hang in a gallery under the title Guilt. On the drive back, I kept turning over his words. Something about the way he said someone made him disappear didn't sit right. He wasn't talking about suspicion. He was talking about knowledge. By the time I got back into town, the rain had turned into a drizzle, and the diner's neon sign flickered weakly through the mist. I parked out front, watching through the window as Maria sat in her usual booth, clutching a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. When she looked up and saw me, she smiled faintly, relief mixed with something else. Fear, maybe, or guilt. Hard to tell the difference when both wear the same mask. I slid into the booth across from her. "I talked to Chris," I said. Her eyes darted toward the window. He's harmless, just angry about the past." "What past?" She hesitated, biting her lip. "It's complicated. Everything in Hollow Creek is complicated. That's how people hide simple lies." I leaned back, watching the rain trace thin lines down the glass. "Maria," I said quietly, "you're not telling me everything. And if you keep holding back, your husband won't just stay missing, he'll stay gone." Her hand trembled around the coffee cup, and for a split second her mask slipped. I caught something in her eyes, not grief. Calculation. The call came just after 7. The sky over Hollow Creek was still heavy with clouds, the kind that promised more rain but hadn't made up their mind yet. I was halfway through a stale sandwich when the phone rang. "Detective Blaine." The voice was young, tight with adrenaline. "Deputy Cole here. We found a vehicle off County Road 12. Blue sedan, plate matches your missing man." That was all I needed. County Road 12 cut through the edge of the forest, the kind of place locals only used when they didn't want to be seen. By the time I got there, fog hung low over the treetops, and the flashing lights from 2 patrol cars bled color into the gray. Evan Holt's sedan sat nose down in the ditch, one door half open, leaves plastered against the windshield. The scene was quiet, too quiet for a man who was supposed to have vanished in panic. Cole was waiting by the car, boots caked with mud. "Doesn't look like an accident," he said. "No," I answered, stepping closer. "It looks like a performance." The driver's seat was pushed back, keys still dangling from the ignition. A half-empty coffee cup with the Route 9 diner logo sat in the holder, its contents long gone cold. The faint smell of aftershave mixed with damp fabric and something metallic, maybe the car, maybe memory. I crouched down, scanning the ground. Tire tracks curved into the trees, then vanished. A faint impression of boot prints led away from the road. 2 sets, one deeper, heavier, dragging slightly. "Get me some photos of that," I told Cole. Following the tracks, I stepped past the first line of trees. The world grew quieter there, sounds swallowed by the moss and fog. And then I saw it, the lake, stretching out ahead, calm and black, reflecting nothing but the empty sky. Hollow Lake. The same place where I'd met Chris Miller the day before. Coincidence? Maybe to anyone else, not to me. Hollow Creek didn't deal in coincidence, only patterns pretending to be random. I knelt by the shoreline. The mud was soft, disturbed. Someone had been here not long ago. Maybe dumping something, maybe retrieving it. My pulse started to sink with the quiet slap of water against the shore. When I stood, I could see my own reflection trembling in the surface, a reminder that every case eventually shows you a part of yourself you'd rather not see. Back in town, I found Maria at her usual post in the diner. Same table, same untouched cup, same look, halfway between despair and something colder. "They found his car," I said. Her eyes widened, hands tightening around the mug. "Oh my God, where?" "Off County Road 12, near the lake." The name alone was enough to drain the color from her face. "That's near Chris's cabin," she whispered. I paused. "How do you know about that?" "Evan told me once," she said quickly. "A long time ago. They used to go fishing there when they were younger, before they stopped talking." "Why'd they stop?" Her eyes darted toward the window away from mine. "People grow apart." I leaned back, studying her. "You've lived in this town long enough to know people here don't just grow apart. Something always happens first." She didn't answer. I stood, dropped a few bills on the table, and tipped my hat toward her. "If Chris is lying, I'll find out. If you are..." I let the rest hang between us. Outside, the neon sign over the diner flickered weakly in the mist. I watched it for a moment, then turned toward the road leading out of town. The lake was calling again, and Hollow Creek was done pretending it didn't know why. By the time I reached Chris Miller's cabin, the fog had thickened into something that felt almost alive. It clung to the trees, the porch, even the sound of my boots on the gravel. The cabin stood a few yards from the lake, old pine logs, tin roof, smoke curling from a crooked chimney. The front door creaked open before I even knocked. Chris filled the doorway like a man used to being left alone. Broad shoulders, unshaven, eyes sharp but tired. "Detective Blaine," he said, forcing a half smile. "Heard you're stirring up ghosts again." "Depends which one's answer," I replied. He stepped aside, letting me in. The cabin smelled of damp wood, coffee, and something faintly chemical, maybe gasoline. A single lamp threw a yellow circle of light across the table. Fishing rods lined one wall, but dust had gathered on them. No sign of recent use. Chris motioned toward a chair. "So, what brings you here? Don't tell me Maria's pointing fingers already." I sat down, hat still on. "Evan's car turned up this morning, not far from here." He froze for half a second, long enough for me to notice. Then he gave a small shrug. "That road's used by half the town. You sure it means anything?" "I don't like coincidences," I said, "and I don't like seeing tracks that lead from his car straight to this lake." His jaw tightened. "You saying I had something to do with that?" "I'm saying you knew him better than anyone, and maybe there's something you haven't told me." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "You think I hurt him, Blaine? You think I'd waste my time on a guy who already ruined his own life? Ruined it how? By lying, by pretending to be something he wasn't. You ever meet a man like that? Smiles for everyone, but under it, he's just waiting for someone to find the rot." I watched him closely. His words carried too much emotion for a man claiming indifference. "What'd he lie about?" Chris looked past me, out the window toward the lake. "Ask Maria. She's better at pretending than anyone I know." He stood, signaling the conversation was over, but I wasn't done yet. Near the fireplace, a dark stain marked the wooden floorboards, faint but fresh. It didn't belong. "You been working on something, Chris?" I asked casually. "Just repairs," he said too quickly. "Boards get damp this close to the lake." "Right," I said, letting it slide for now. Outside, I paused on the porch and looked back. Through the window, Chris stood perfectly still, staring at me, his face unreadable in the lamplight. The fog swallowed the cabin as I walked toward my car. The air smelled like rain and secrets. In my line of work, guilt has a rhythm. Some people wear it loud, nervous, defensive, desperate to convince. Chris wore his quiet, like a song only he could hear. But something told me I wasn't just chasing a missing man anymore. I was chasing a story that had been rehearsed long before I arrived, and every rehearsal needs an audience. By the time I rolled back into town, Hollow Creek was pretending everything was fine again. It always did that, burying tension under small talk and half smiles. But the silence here never meant peace. It meant people were hiding something. The diner was quieter than usual. Locals sat hunched over their meals, whispering. I could feel their eyes on me before I even reached the counter. June, the waitress, poured me coffee without asking. "You knew Evan Holt?" I asked. She paused mid-pour. Everyone knew Evan, good worker, but there was always a shadow. He smiled like he was trying to convince himself he was happy. "What kind of shadow?" "Chris Miller," she said. "They used to be close. Then something went bad between them, money, maybe pride. Maria tried to keep the peace, but sometimes peace costs too much." "Maria's name keeps coming up," I said. June gave a small shrug. "That woman knows how to make people trust her, but that kind of gift cuts both ways." I left her with a generous tip and stepped back outside. The rain had started again, soft, steady, cleansing nothing. At the sheriff's office, Deputy Cole was still at his desk, eyes red from too much coffee and not enough sleep. "Found something near the lake," he said, pulling a bag from the drawer. Inside was a water-stained piece of paper. I unfolded it carefully. The words were smudged but legible. "You can't keep doing this to me. I won't stay quiet anymore." "Recognize the handwriting?" Cole asked. "Not yet," I said, "but I will." Back in my office, I pinned the note on my corkboard. Under it, a photo of Evan and Maria. They looked happy, too happy. Forced smiles, rehearsed posture, like actors in a scene they no longer believed in. I drew a few lines on the board. Evan right arrow Chris, old grudge. Evan right arrow Maria, broken marriage. Maria right arrow Chris, connection no one wanted to talk about. It wasn't a triangle anymore, it was a loop. And in my experience, loops always end up strangling someone. I needed to see Maria again. But not yet. I wanted to know what she'd do when no one was watching. That night, I parked across from the Holt house. Curtains half closed, lights on. Through the window, Maria sat at the dining table, her head in her hands, the picture of grief until she wasn't. She straightened, wiped her eyes, and smiled. Not a sad smile, a knowing one. Then a shadow moved beside her. A man. He leaned forward, said something I couldn't hear. But I didn't need to. The outline, the posture, unmistakable. Chris Miller. I stayed there a minute longer, rain tapping on the windshield like an impatient metronome. Then I started the engine. In Hollow Creek, people didn't disappear by accident. They were removed carefully, deliberately, by someone who knew how to make the town look the other way. And I had a feeling Maria Holt was better at that than anyone. Morning came gray and slow, dragging fog through the streets like a tired ghost. Hollow Creek looked peaceful, but I'd been here long enough to know quiet in this town was never honest. I sat in my office, blinds half closed, cold coffee untouched. Maria Holt was coming. I'd called her the night before. She'd agreed too quickly. Her voice had that polished tremor, the kind people use when they want to sound helpless. When she entered, the air seemed to shrink around her. Gray coat, pinned hair, calm steps. She looked like someone rehearsing grief. "Detective," she said softly, taking a seat. "You said you found something." "I found a lot of things," I replied. "Your husband's car near the lake. A note says someone was tired of being controlled. And a witness who saw you with Chris Miller last night." Her eyes flickered. "He came by to check on me. You can ask him." "I already did," I said. "He tells a different story." She folded her hands. "You think I had something to do with Evan's disappearance. I think you're better at lying than you realize." Something inside her shifted. "You don't know what it's like living with someone who hides everything. Evan wasn't the man people thought he was." "Then tell me who he was." She hesitated, eyes darting to the window. "He took money from Chris years ago. Never paid it back. Chris never forgave him. Lately, Evan was distant, angry. He said he wanted to leave me, the kids, all of it." Her tone was smooth, too prepared. "Why protect him now?" I asked. "Because even after everything, he was my husband." For a moment, I almost believed her. Almost. Then the mask slipped, her voice cooled, her face hardened. "If you're looking for someone to blame, look somewhere else." "Don't worry," I said. "I'm looking everywhere." She stood, straightened her coat, and left without another word. When the door shut, I noticed the blinds trembling slightly, though the air was still. Through the gap, I caught sight of a black sedan across the street. engine running, tinted windows. I stepped closer, but before I could focus, the car rolled away smooth, unhurried, like whoever was inside wanted me to know they'd been there. Someone was watching. I went downstairs, scanning the street. Nothing but puddles, streetlights, and the slow hum of the town pretending to be normal. Back upstairs, the room felt wrong, like it had exhaled while I was gone. My coffee sat untouched, but there was something new on the desk. A photograph. Evan Holt standing by the lake. Behind him, blurred but unmistakable, Maria, watching him. I turned the photo over. One line written in pencil: "He found out." For a long moment, I just stared at it. The sound of the rain outside faded until all I could hear was my own pulse. In Hollow Creek, truth didn't surface on its own. Someone always had to drag it up, kicking, bleeding, and screaming. And I had a feeling this truth wasn't done fighting yet. The storm came back that night, louder, heavier, like the town itself wanted to wash away what we'd all been pretending not to see. I drove through the rain toward Hollow Creek Lake, wipers struggling against the downpour. Maria was already there. Her car sat half off the gravel road, headlights cutting through the fog. She stood near the shoreline, the water licking at her boots, her coat soaked through. She didn't turn when I approached. "You said you found something," she called out, her voice barely carrying over the rain. "I did," I answered. "A photo. You and Evan here the night he vanished." She went still. A small, almost imperceptible breath escaped her. Then she said softly, "We came here often. He liked the quiet." "Quiet can be dangerous," I said, stepping closer. "It lets people think too much. Sometimes it tells them things they don't want to hear." She finally turned toward me. Her face looked pale under the flash of lightning, beautiful but cold. "You think I killed him?" "I don't think," I said. "I know." Her eyes flickered, the mask slipping for just a moment. "You don't know what it was like, detective. He was leaving. Said he was done with me, with all of us." "So you followed him here," I said quietly. "There was an argument, he pushed you. You fought back. One hit too hard and everything went black. You panicked, dragged him to the lake, burned his wallet, and made a call to Chris to frame him." She shook her head slowly. "He said he'd take the kids, said I didn't deserve them. And that's when you decided neither of you did." For a long moment, the only sound was the rain. Then she whispered, "I didn't mean to, I just wanted him to stop." "Maybe," I said. "But you didn't stop, Maria, you kept going." She closed her eyes. "You know, if I'd said he ran away, everyone would have believed it. Everyone always believes the quiet ones." "Maybe they do," I said. "But lies don't float forever." She looked past me then and saw the lights. Police cruisers sliding through the fog, red and blue, flashing across the lake like broken reflections. "I'd called them before I came." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You tricked me." "I gave you a chance to tell the truth," I said. When the officers stepped out, she didn't fight. She just lifted her hands, letting them cuff her gently, as if it were a relief. The rain traced down her face, washing away the last trace of the woman she'd tried to be. As they led her past me, she turned her head. For a second, our eyes met. And what I saw there wasn't hatred. It wasn't even guilt. It was peace, the hollow kind that comes when you've finally stopped running. They took her away. The sirens faded into the distance, leaving only the sound of rain and the restless water. I stood there a while, watching the ripples fade. Hollow Creek would move on by morning. It always did. But as I turned back toward my car, one thought stayed with me, the same one that always does. The truth never really sets anyone free. It just changes who wears the chains.